What happens when meteorologists start using words like unprecedented and historic for the same weather pattern 2 weeks in a row? Right now, as I speak to you, the jet stream is about to flip completely, ending weeks of Arctic blast and setting up what could be the warmest Christmas in decades. A wavy north-to-south jet stream that's been driving frequent Arctic air surges into the central and eastern states is about to smooth out and take a more level west-to-east path. This dramatic shift will melt away snow across much of the northern United States while creating new problems we need to discuss. I'm Michael Thompson, and today is Wednesday, December 17th, 2025. In the next 16 minutes, I'll walk you through exactly why this pattern change is happening now, what it means for your Christmas plans, and how long we can expect it to last. Here's what makes this pattern flip different from any other forecast you'll hear today. This isn't just a temporary warm-up. I'm pulling data from the National Weather Service Weather Prediction Center that shows broad, strengthening ridging will affect the interior west to central United States into early next week, allowing for above-average to record-breaking warm temperatures. What really caught my attention is the timing. December's cold start has been tied to the disruption of the polar vortex at the end of November. That same disruption that brought us early winter weather is now setting up what meteorologists are calling a meltdown pattern just 1 week before Christmas. But here's where this story gets complicated. While the eastern United States is about to see massive warming, the Pacific Northwest continues dealing with what NASA is calling a 7,000-mile atmospheric river stretching from near the Philippines. Over 100,000 people remain in evacuation zones in Washington state from historic flooding that broke records dating back to 1990. The contrast between regions is becoming extreme. Rivers in western Washington are setting new flood records, while snow across the Midwest and Northeast, some areas seeing their first significant accumulations, is about to disappear completely. Now let me show you something that might surprise you about this pattern flip. The same jet stream configuration that's been bringing us Arctic surges for weeks is essentially, quote, flatlining. When meteorologists see this transition from wavy to flat, it typically signals a complete regime change that can last weeks or even months. Let me walk you through exactly what happened to get us here. Since early December, we've had what's called a wavy meridional flow, the jet stream dipping far south into Canada and allowing Arctic air to spill into the United States repeatedly. This pattern created the coldest temperatures of the season last weekend, built significant snowpack across the northern tier, and had many of you thinking we were in for a classic cold, snowy December leading up to Christmas. But now the jet stream is transitioning to what we call zonal flow, a much flatter west to east orientation. When this happens, Arctic air gets locked up in Canada and stays there. Warm air from the Pacific and Gulf of Mexico can surge northward with little resistance. That's exactly what's about to happen this weekend and beyond. Don't miss what I'm about to reveal at precisely the 3-minute mark, because I'll break down exactly what each region across America can expect from this pattern change, including the shocking temperature forecast that could shatter December records. The Weather Prediction Center is forecasting above average to record-breaking warm temperatures for most of the continental United States as astronomical winter begins. That's not typical forecast language. That's meteorologist speak for this is going to be remarkable. At exactly 3 minutes, here's your comprehensive regional breakdown of this massive pattern shift. Starting in the Northeast, where many of you woke up to fresh snow from last weekend's storm, that snow is about to become a rapidly melting problem. From Maine to Pennsylvania, temperatures will surge 30 to 40 degrees above normal this weekend. Boston could hit 60 degrees by Sunday. That's more typical of early October than late December. New York City, where Central Park recorded 2.7 inches of snow and set a daily record just days ago, you're looking at possible 70-degree temperatures by Monday. Philadelphia could reach the mid-60s. These aren't just warm temperatures for December. These are temperatures that could break records that have stood for decades. The melting concerns are real. any area that received significant snow from last weekend's storm, and that includes much of upstate New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, and western Massachusetts, will see rapid snowmelt that could cause localized flooding. Storm drains that are still partially blocked by snow and ice won't handle the sudden runoff well. Moving to the mid-Atlantic, where the contrast will be even more dramatic. Washington, D.C. could see temperatures approaching 70 degrees by early next week. Richmond, Virginia might hit the mid-70s. These are temperatures that would be perfectly normal for late September, but are extraordinary for the week before Christmas. Across the Midwest, where the recent polar vortex disruption brought some of the coldest air of the season, the reversal will be stunning. Chicago, where temperatures dropped below zero just days ago, could reach 60 degrees by Christmas Eve. That's a temperature swing of more than 60 degrees in less than 2 weeks. Detroit, Minneapolis, and Milwaukee will all see similar dramatic warming. Minneapolis-St. Paul, which normally has a 74% chance of a white Christmas according to historical data, will likely see complete snowmelt by Sunday. The Great Lakes region faces a particularly interesting situation. Lake effect snow areas that have been building. Impressive snowpacks will see rapid melting, but the lakes themselves are still relatively warm from the extended fall season. This temperature contrast could create some impressive fog events early next week. Moving south, where the changes are equally dramatic, but in different ways. The Tennessee Valley and Ohio Valley will see temperatures surge into the 70s and potentially low 80s by Monday and Tuesday. Louisville could hit 75 degrees. Nashville might reach 77 degrees. These are temperatures that would set daily records and approach monthly records. Further south, the Deep South will experience what can only be described as summer-like conditions for late December. Atlanta could reach 80 degrees. Birmingham might hit 82 degrees. New Orleans could see temperatures near 85 degrees, temperatures that would be warm even for July, let alone the week of Christmas. Texas faces an interesting split pattern. Eastern Texas will see the full effect of the warming ridge, with Houston potentially reaching the upper 80s and Dallas hitting the low 80s. But western Texas, particularly around El Paso, will remain cooler due to elevation and proximity to persistent Pacific storm systems. The Mountain West presents the most complex forecast. While the warming ridge will definitely affect this region, elevation will moderate the extremes. Denver could reach the 60s, which is still well above normal for December. Salt Lake City might hit the upper 50s, but the higher elevations will remain much cooler, creating significant temperature gradients that could affect travel through mountain passes. Now here's where this pattern flip gets particularly interesting from a meteorological perspective. The Pacific Northwest will remain active with additional atmospheric rivers, but the rest of the country will see what forecasters call quasi-zonal flow. Essentially, a very quiet, stable pattern that locks warm air in place. But wait, there's something most forecasts aren't telling you about how long this will last. Looking at ensemble model data and historical patterns, this type of regime change typically persists for 2 to 4 weeks once it's fully established. That means we could be looking at warm conditions not just through Christmas, but potentially into mid-January or even the second half of January. Here's exactly what you need to do in the next 48 hours to prepare for this dramatic change. Priority 1, immediate preparation for rapid snowmelt. If you have significant snow around your property, check storm drains and gutters now. Clear any ice dams from gutters before temperatures surge this weekend. Move any vehicles parked in low-lying areas where rapid snowmelt could cause temporary flooding. Priority 2, adjust your Christmas preparations. If you are planning outdoor activities based on cold weather expectations, you'll need to completely revise your plans. Skiing trips to lower elevations will likely be problematic. Ice fishing activities will become dangerous as ice weakens rapidly. Holiday light displays that rely on snow cover for effect will lose that aesthetic by this weekend. Priority 3, prepare for potential flooding issues. While not widespread, rapid snowmelt combined with any rainfall could cause localized flooding in poor drainage areas. This is especially concerning in urban areas. where storm systems are already stressed from the recent snow and ice. The timing of this pattern flip is particularly critical for Christmas travel planning. Here's your day-by-day timeline for the most significant changes. Friday through Saturday, the warming begins in earnest across the eastern United States. This is when you'll start to see snow disappearing rapidly. Sunday through Monday, temperatures peak at their most extreme levels. This is when daily records will be set and monthly records will be threatened. If you have sensitive plants that were protected by snow cover, the sudden exposure to warm temperatures could be problematic. Tuesday through Christmas Day, temperatures remain well above normal, but begin to moderate slightly from their peak levels. However, we're still looking at temperatures 20 to 30 degrees above normal for most of the eastern two-thirds of the United States. Here's what you need to know about Christmas week that could save you significant problems. This warming trend creates what meteorologists call false spring conditions. Temperatures warm enough to potentially trick plants into beginning to break dormancy. For gardeners and farmers, this creates vulnerability if cold weather returns later in the winter season. The economic implications are significant too. Ski resorts across the northern United States are facing potential closure of lower elevation slopes. Ice fishing tournaments are being canceled or postponed. Winter festivals that depend on cold weather are scrambling to adjust their programs. Meanwhile, in the Pacific Northwest, the story remains dramatically different. Additional atmospheric rivers are forecast for next week, bringing renewed flooding concerns to areas that are still recovering from the historic events of early December. The Skagit and Snohomish rivers may not have time to fully recede before the next round of heavy rainfall arrives. Here's something that might surprise you about this entire pattern sequence. What we're experiencing is actually a textbook example of how climate patterns can create extreme variability within short time frames. The polar vortex disruption that gave us the early December cold is the same mechanism that's now setting up. The record warmth. It's like atmospheric whiplash on a continental scale. For those of you who've lived through many winters like this, you might recognize similarities to past events. The winter of 1998 to 1999 had a similar pattern flip in December, leading to one of the warmest Christmases on record. The winter of 2015 to 16 also featured a dramatic December warm-up that persisted well into January. The difference now is the intensity and speed of the transition, which reflects broader changes in how our atmosphere behaves under current climate conditions. Here's what really matters for your daily life and Christmas planning. If you've been dreaming of a white Christmas, the reality is that only the highest elevations and northernmost areas will retain any snow cover by Christmas morning. Cities like Marquette, Michigan, and Duluth, Minnesota, which typically have 90% plus odds of a white Christmas, will still likely see their snow disappear. For Christmas travel, this actually creates mostly positive conditions. The severe winter weather threats that often complicate holiday travel will be largely absent. However, the rapid temperature changes could create some unexpected challenges. Dense fog from snowmelt could reduce visibility in some areas. Rapidly changing road conditions could catch unprepared drivers off guard. Looking beyond Christmas into early January and the potential duration of this pattern, the ensemble forecast model suggests this warm regime could extend well into the new year. If that verification holds, we could be looking at one of the most persistent warm anomalies in recent memory for the heart of winter. Now let me bring this all together for you with the 3 most critical things you need to remember about this dramatic pattern change and its implications. Immediate actions. Prepare for rapid snowmelt this weekend. Check drainage around your property, clear gutters and storm drains, and move vehicles from low-lying areas where temporary flooding could occur. The transition will happen fast, much faster than typical spring snowmelt. Key timing. Sunday and Monday will see the most extreme temperatures. This is when records will fall and when the most dramatic snowmelt will occur. Tuesday through Christmas remains warm but moderates slightly from the peak intensity. Duration expectations. This isn't just a brief Christmas warm-up. Based on pattern recognition and ensemble model consensus, This warm regime could persist for 2 to 4 weeks, potentially lasting into mid or late January before any significant pattern change. Remember, while this warm pattern will dominate most of the United States, the Pacific Northwest continues to deal with active weather. Additional atmospheric rivers next week will bring renewed flooding threats to areas still recovering from the historic December flooding. For the rest of us, this Christmas will be remembered as one of the warmest in recent history. If you're planning outdoor Christmas activities, you might want to plan them like you would for early autumn rather than winter. Shorts and t-shirts may be more appropriate than winter coats. Stay alert for changing conditions, especially if you're in areas with significant snowpack that will be melting rapidly. Check on elderly neighbors who might be confused by the dramatic temperature changes and could need assistance. Adjusting home heating systems or dealing with snowmelt around their properties. I'll be monitoring this pattern closely and will update you immediately if any significant changes develop. Based on current ensemble model consensus, expect this warm pattern to be well established by Sunday and to persist through the Christmas holiday and likely well into the new year. In my next forecast, I'll reveal what this extended warm pattern could mean for the rest of the winter season. Will we see a return to more typical winter weather in February, or could this regime change signal a fundamentally different winter than anything we've experienced in recent years? I'm Michael Thompson. Enjoy the warm weather safely, and I'll see you in the next forecast.